the new chapter from now on, and then let me see. Okay. Okay. So this chapter, biological basis of behavior, there are many new terminology. So we'll learn about some, like, for example, about our like brain function, like neuroanatomy and neuron and dendrites and cell body and soma and myelin sheaths and terminal burden and neurotransmitters, synapse, receptor size, everything it happens just in our brain, inside our brain. And threshold, action potential, or non-principle, and neural firing, excitatory, neurotransmitters, inhibitory, and dopamine, endorphin, serotonin. Maybe you've heard this terminology, right?
Yeah, this one. I've
Yeah,
heard of
yeah,
it.
and GABA and glutamate, norepinephrine, epinephrine. This like this like dopamine, endorphin, serotonin, this kind of like hormone and are very like related our emotion. So that's why the this hormone and can be used for like psychiatrists. They just prescribe some medicine to boost this like emotion hormone, and also afferent neuron and central nervous system and spinal cord, and then peripheral nervous system, somatic nervous system, autonomic like nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, and so on. EEG, electroencephalogram. So it is really helpful per like per the patients, mentally patients like changes of mood or just hormone or something like that, and computerized exterior tomography, so CT scan or CAT. Maybe you heard like this one, right?
Yeah. City
And
scan.
yeah, yeah, and magnetic resonance imaging, MRI scan. And also you've heard this one, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah, and fMRI, PET, and then cerebellum, medulla, hindbrain, and also midbrain, forebrain, thalamus, hypothalamus, amygdala. They are all like part of our brain part.
Mm.
And hippocampus, limbic system, cerebral cortex, hemisphere, left hemisphere, right hemisphere, and brain lateralization, hemisphere specialization, and corpus callosum, lobes, association area, frontal lobes, broadcast area, Wernicke's area, motor cortex, parietal lobes, sensory cortex, occipital lobes, temporal lobes, brain plasticity, endocrine system, adrenal glands, monozygotic twins. So these are all terminologies are all related our brain function. So this chapter, biological basis of behavior, is about our brain function. So let's look at next one. So overview, let's look here. Actually, this like chapter is related biology. So
Mm.
yeah, biology and psychiatry. So it is a part of overlapping part. There are some overlapping part. So and also there's some like pharmaceutical part. So the influence of biology, sometimes called neuroscience or biopsychological perspectives, is growing nowadays. So that's why so many pharmaceutical and psychiatrists and biologists, they just develop new kind of like medicine. Some researchers predict that someday psychology will be a specialty within the field of biology. Yeah, some researchers said like that. An understanding of biological principles relevant to psychology is needed, not only per the AP exam, but per any understanding of current psychological thinking. So that's why we learn this one. And here, neuroanatomy. Actually, neuro means like it is inside our brain. There is a lot of like neuron, you know. Neuron is a kind of line and that is like very complex and it is connected each other. And neural anatomy refers to the study of the parts and function of neurons. Then, what is neuron? Neurons are individual nerve cells. It is just one cell. And a lot of cells, it is neurons. These cells make up our entire nervous system, from the brain to the neurons that fire when you stop your toe. So our body, it consists of a lot of nervous system. That's why we can just feel and then we can just understand, then we can just like, there's a lot of sensory like motors, like we can look, we can listen, we can just to taste, we can just to smell like this because our body consists of a lot of entirely nervous system. Every neuron is made up of discrete part. So here there is a box and then inside the box there are some terminology and let's look at more. And then the rice. So it is look like part of the cell that stretch out from the cell body. Dendrites grow to make synaptic connections with other neurons. And cell body is called also soma. It contains the nucleus and other parts of the cell needed to sustain its life. And there is another terminology axon. It is wire-like structure ending in the terminal button that extends from the cell body. And myelin shapes, a fatty covering around the axon of some neurons that speed neural impulses. And another one is terminal button. It is also just the end button, terminal branches of axon, and synaptic knobs. It is the branches end of axon that contains neurotransmitters. And nextly, neurotransmitters, it is kind of chemicals contained in terminal buttons that enable neurons to communicate each other. So neurotransmitters fit into receptor sites on the dendrites of neurons, like a key fits into a lock. And synapse. Synapse, it is the space between the terminal button of one neuron and the dendrites of the next neuron. So let's look at the picture here. So this is just one neuron. And this is a dendrite, and this is a soma, and this is an axon, and this is myelin shafts. And here there is a terminal button, and then there is some space. So it's called synapse. It is a kind of gap between neurons. So neuron A, neuron B, there's some space between neuron. It is called synapse. So, and then there is a terminal button. So here they just to push, and then they just to emit some this one, neurotransmitters, some chemicals to the next one. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, right.
Okay, good. Then let's get over how a neuron fires. So all of the different parts of the neuron work in sequence when a neuron transmits a message. In its resting state, a neuron has an overall slightly negative charge, which says minus 70 like MV, because mostly negative ions are within the cell, and mostly positive ions are surrounding it. Mhm. And the cell membrane of the neuron is selectively permeable and prevents these ions from mixing. So visualize a two neuron chain. The reaction begins when the terminal button of neuron A are stimulated and release neurotransmitters into the synapse. Then these neurotransmitters fit into receptor site on the dendrite of neuron B. Do you understand what it makes?
Yeah, for the two neurons, neuron A and neuron B.
Okay. If enough neurotransmitters are received, this level is called the threshold. So enough level threshold, the cell membrane of neuron B becomes permeable and positive ions rush into the cell, bringing the charge within the cell to approximately plus 30 MV. So here, let's look at right side the gray box. There is a tip. Neural firing is an electrochemical process. It's a kind of electrochemical process. So electricity travels within the cell from the dendrites to the terminal button. And then chemicals, neurotransmitters travel between cells. in the synapse. Synapse is a kind of space. Electricity does not jump between the neuron. So do you understand what it says?
Yes, like they travel like in one direction and not really jumping.
Okay, it is good. And the chains in charge spread down the length of neuron B like a bullet from a gun. A bullet from a gun. This electric message firing is called an action potential. So it travels very quickly. It really happens very quickly. 120 meters per second. It is really happen very quickly. When the charge reaches the terminal button of neuron B, the button releases their neurotransmitters like dopamine or serotonin, something like that, into the synapse. Synapse is a kind of space. Then the process may begin again if enough neurotransmitters are received by that next cell to pass the threshold. But if they don't have enough neurotransmitters are received, what happens? Then they need some like medicine. That's why the psychiatrist just prescribe some medicine, you know, like dopamine or serotonin. So lack of
Yes.
dopamine, they just to show something, some abnormal behavior, like some bubbly or something like illusion and then some kind of like they show some kind of like abnormal like things. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I see.
Okay. And notice that a neuron either fires completely or it does not fire. This is called the all or none principle. All or none. If the dendrites of a neuron receive enough neurotransmitters to push the neuron past its threshold, the neuron will fire completely every time. A neuron cannot fire a little or a lot. The impulse is the same every time. Yeah, this is what it functions like that. And there is very important things. This is kind of chemical neurotransmitters. It just to like transfer into the new neuron A to neuron B between snaps. Yeah. So you already know that neurotransmitters are chemicals and how in the terminal buttons they travel in the synaptic gap between neurons. It is important to understand that different types of neurotransmitters exist, like dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, norepinephrine, like this. They function differently. Some neurotransmitters are excitatory, meaning that they excite the next cell into firing. But other neurotransmitters are inhibitory, opposite, meaning that they inhibit the next cell from firing. So each synaptic gap at any time may contain many different kinds of inhibitory and excitatory neurotransmitters. The amount and type of neurotransmitters received on the receptor sides of the neuron determine whether it will pass the threshold and fire. Researchers are identifying different type and function of neurotransmitters every year. This ongoing research makes generalizing about what each neurotransmitter does difficult. However, table 3 indicates some of the more important type and function of neurotransmitters to psychologists. So let's look at table 3 here. So this is table 3. And there are some famous and important neurotransmitters to psychologists, especially clinical psychologists. Like, for example, number 1 is acetylcholine, and it functions motor movement. So, the problems associated with an excess or deficit, it means like over or lack. Then, lack of acetylcholine is associated with Alzheimer's disease. So maybe you've heard of this disease, right?
Yes, I've
Yeah.
heard of that.
Yeah, and also dopamine. This is also very popular and famous and important neurotransmitter. And it is also function, motor movement, and alertness. So, lack of dopamine is associated with Parkinson's disease. And overabundance is associated with schizophrenia. So lacking or overing are differently. So maybe you've heard the Parkinson's disease. So they just look numb, and schizophrenia, they just mentally just break down, and then they just suffer from some hallucination and illusion, like something like that. And endorphin, this is also function pain control, and it is involved in addiction. So like alcoholic and drug abuse, and these are also like very related to these hormone, these neurotransmitters. And serotonin, it's famous for happy hormone, so it just to function like mood control. So lack of serotonin is associated with clinical depression. So it also, the sunlight also just to trigger some serotonin in our brain. So when we look at the sunshine, when we just got some light, then the serotonin just to triggers. So our mood, that's why our mood just to like boost. Do you understand?
Yeah, that's why people want to go to nature for
Okay.
this.
Okay. And then next one is GABA. GABA is also very popular and important one. And it functions like important inhibitory neurotransmitter. So GABA is very, very related to the problems of sleep like problem. So the milk and banana, the food of like banana, they have a lot of GABA like material. So when you have some, if you have any difficulty of sleep problems, you can just drink some milk. People just going to bed. Then it just to helps to like relieve your sleep difficulty.
Oh,
Mhm. And also banana as well.
I
And
think I need milk.
oh yeah, and glutamate, an excitatory neurotransmitter, and it is involved in memory. So that's why it is really, really important for the students like you because it is involved in memory. So uh, it is like migraine or seizures and norepinephrine. And if you it function alertness and arousal. So if you are lacking, then it can trigger a depression. You just to lose some interesting of anything of your life, like something like that. That's why these like neurotransmitters are really, really important for our daily lives. So, and also there are interneurons. Like once information reaches the brain or spinal cord, interneuron takes the message and sends them elsewhere in the brain or on the afferent neurons. An afferent neuron or motor neuron. This is take information from the new brain to the rest of the body. And this is also very important topic, organization of the nervous system. So actually our body consists of full of nervous system, but our nervous system is divided into different categories based on function.
Mm.
Firstly, the two main divisions are the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So the first one is central and second one's peripheral nervous system. These are then subdivided further. Okay. So then what is central nervous system? Central nervous system abbreviation is CNS. It consists of our brain and spinal cord. All the nerves houses within bone, like the skull and vertebrae. Information about the structure and function of different parts of the brain is available in a later section. The spinal cord is a bundle of nerves that runs through the center of the spine. It transmits information from the rest of the body to the brain.
Mm.
This is the function of the central nervous system. And let's look at next one, peripheral nervous system. And peripheral nervous system, abbreviation PNS, consists of all the other nervous system in our body. All the nerves not encases in bone. The peripheral nervous system is divided into two categories. One is somatic, the other one is autonomic nervous system. So let's look at more. I think I just to send this one and then I think today let's do up to now and then tomorrow let's continue about the peripheral nervous system. And up to now, do you have any question about today's lecture?
No, none so far. I really love the neurotransmitter parts. Like I learned a lot from that.
Yeah, so which kind of like neurotransmitters are you really interested in? With which neurotransmitters?
Like the dopamine, endorphins, and the GABA, especially. I just learned GABA today
Oh,
because
really?
I have a hard time like sleeping.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, I have a hard time sleeping like from until 3 a.m., 4 a.m. So I don't know why it happened like that. So I think I learned a lot like to eat bananas more and consume milk
yeah,
more.
it is very helpful. So people going to bed just to drink some like warm milk and then eat bananas. They contain a lot of GABA material, so it just can help your like sleep disturbance. So it is really, really helpful. So yeah, so you're really learn a lot of things.
Yeah,
So
I did.
yeah. So let's call it a day and see you next Monday, okay?
Yeah, next week.
Next week. So have a nice weekend.
Yeah, you too. Have a great day ahead and have a nice weekend ahead. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Young. I learned a lot today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.